Recently, the cricket community lost one of the legends of the game, Shane Warne. And I wanted to just read out a small poem in his memory, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. So the poem is called The Dash, and it goes something like this. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears, but he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. Gideon Haig has described Shane Warne as the soul of indiscretion in a prim, censorious game. I wanted to get your thoughts on Shane Warne as well. What did he represent to you? What did the dash between his ears mean for you?
Oh man, Shane Warne was, he traumatized, and of course, his Ashes record and his record against India is talked about more, but he traumatized Pakistan through his entire existence. Like, he was such a bowler, that I think him and McGrath were really up there. And I think as a Pakistani, we came across Shane Warne in a slightly different way to the rest of the world, because we already had like Abdul Qadir and we'd had Mushtaq Ahmed around the same time as Shane Warne. And so I think there was a sense of proprietorship over leg spin. We were like, okay, yeah, Shane Warne is good, but we had Abdul Qadir and he had the googly, and we have Mushtaq, who's won a World Cup already in '92, and Shane Warne was getting hit by Ravi Shastri at that stage. We were like, yeah, Shane Warne maybe. But then you started to watch him, like you started to see him bowl, and you kind of removed yourself from the nationalist context of like watching him bowl against Pakistan, but you watch him bowl, and the things he could do with that ball, like just physical, like so I believe greatly in like the aesthetics of sports, like that's what attracts me in a big way. So football, basketball, these are beautiful sports to watch at their greatest moments. They're beautiful at their greatest kind of feats. They are beautiful things to watch, and that appeals to me strongly, of course, in cricket. We romanticize the cover drive or the fast Yorker or whatever. So visually, I think that's always been important in any sport, that you see something happen physically and you're like, whoa, how the hell did that happen? Like you may not be that into the game, but if you see something like that, you're like, wow. So I always thought with Shane Warne, what he used to do with the ball, whether it was that flipper, or whether it was the big leg breaks early on in his career, or whether it was a zooter. He did so much that looked impossible with the ball that, even if you hadn't watched cricket, you'd be like, okay, this guy is the business. This guy is doing something that is clearly special. I may not understand exactly how special and why it's that special, but I have seen, like, you take some examples. Obviously the Gatting ball is a famous one. The ball to Saeed Anwar, at Brisbane, the ball to Andrew Strauss, the ball to Lakshman, the ball to, I wrote about this, the ball to, who was it? I've forgotten. The ball to M.K. Prasad in 99, which, was kind of delivered from over the wicket, and it drifted, like it went and it just drifted and bowled him around his legs, from over the wicket to bowl somebody around their legs who's just playing like a defensive prod. It was just insane. So, the things that he did with the ball, I think at its most elemental, that was just cricket, because you saw that and you were like, okay, this guy. And then you saw, of course, the blonde hair and the celebration and the zinc on the lips and stuff. And you're like, okay, this guy's a rock star, but it's because he does rock star things on the field. So like, for that, I think for Shane Warne, we talk sometimes, just within Cricinfo about maybe doing something sometime on who's the most influential cricketer in the world, in the sense that they make you want to play, they make kids want to play the game. So we always... We look at Shahid Afridi as one, because everybody in Pakistan, Afghanistan, even, players in India, when they're growing up, they're like, I want to be like him. I want to play like Shahid Afridi plays. Shane Warne was one of those guys. Shane Warne was a guy who, leg spinners come out now and they're like, I want to bowl like Shane Warne, because he was just amazing. And so, I think that impact of what he did physically and the impact that it had on people who might not have been in the game, I think that has always stood out for me. Like, all his wickets, of course, he was a great bowler, and then the strategy and the tactics and the mind of Warne, but the pure physical act of how much he used to spin a ball and how the crazy ways in which he used to get batsmen out, I will never forget that. At its most elemental, at its most basic, it was just crazy what he did. And, you and I were talking earlier about, like, the kind of romantic side of this. You watch things and you see them and you're like, wow, Sehwag, over point or flicking through mid wicket or whatever. And then you see Shane Warne bowling somebody a leg break and it's absolutely the same level. You're like, wow, that is something that I need to keep watching over and over again. And I think for me, that was just the biggest impact of Warne, is what he made the game look like when he was playing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. So, like I mentioned, I vividly remember getting into cricket in 2003. And I largely got in through by reading newspaper articles and building images. There's a kind of a fictional image that I built off. And that was the year Shane Warne was banned. So he was not there. And there was this
Just before the World Cup.
always this mention that, and I already had this image of the Australian cricket team as unbeatable. And there's always a mention of like this one player who's missing, who's gonna come and like make it even better. I was like, how is this even possible? Like, how can you, yeah, how is the best player still not there? And still the Australian team is at that level. And then all these articles that talk about him. And then when he came, somehow he was even better and bigger and richer than the image I built in my mind, because Shane Warne was he was a phenomenon of his own.
The stuff he did, like after that World Cup, I remember that the 2004 series in India, when they finally won a series in India, I think 2-1 they won. Gilchrist was captain and Ponting was supposed to be captain, I think. Yeah, that's right. Gilchrist captain. And Shane Warne's bowling in that series was, he picked up maybe 13 wickets in 4 test matches. So he wasn't his usual kind of, big wicket taking self. But the way he bowled, the smartness, he realized that his role was not to be the showman, but, not with the big spinning leg breaks. But my role was to be the guy who keeps the run rate down to 2 runs and over. Yeah. Bowled defensive fields, attacking lines, but defensive fields. And, he picked up some crucial wickets. Lakshman at Bangalore is one of the all-time great wickets that he picked up. Bit of drift. To get somebody like Lakshman, bit of drift into his pads, to top of off, just amazing to get that. But, the way he changed himself for that series, the way he kind of controlled his own ego and showmanship and said, no, I'm going to support McGrath and Kasparovich, who are going to be the wicket takers here, and Jason Gillespie. They're going to be the wicket takers here. I'm just going to support them in the background and keep a lid on the run rate. And, it helped Australia win that one series. In India, they haven't won a series since. That was their first win for like 30 years and stuff. So, his performance there was just further proof. I mean, we didn't need it by that stage, but, this was after the World Cup and he had just come back from that drugs ban. Yeah. India had drawn that series without him in Australia, the 2003-4 series. And then, he came back and he did this, and it was just like, you are the best. Absolutely.